Hi everyone. Let's start the stream again. Unfortunately, I had some technical issues. So, before we start, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Yulia Moisiva, and I'm a registered migration agent. I've been dealing with visas since 2010, and I have my team here on the Gold Coast. You can see it from my background. I'm in the office at the moment, and today we will be discussing skilled visas, skilled point tested visas, subclass 189, 190, and 491. So before we start, a little bit of ground rules. I will be discussing some relevant information, what happened during 2024-2025 program year with those visas, giving you information about tips, any recommendations, and how the process goes. After we finish the live stream, I will be happy to take any questions from the audience if you wish to discuss any particular circumstances or situation. So let's begin. First of all, skilled visas are independent from employer visas, where the applicants will have to be competing among each other in a pool of applications called expressions of interest. Yeah, in order to get there, the main applicant has to be under 45. The main applicant has to have relevant occupation and qualification and work experience assessed by relevant skill assessment authority. Then the primary applicant has to have competent English. And a recent development between 2024-2025 program year, a lot of states and territories are emphasizing that they are looking at candidates with superior English. So competent English may not win you no invitations. At the same time, the state and territories would like to have secondary applicant also skilled enough with English and skill assessment as well. So that's what happened between 2024 and 2025. So let's break down those visas by categories. So first and most desired visa is 189 visa, is skilled independent visa, where the applicants are applying independently. They don't go through state nomination, and the system will actually invite the applicants pretty much automatically based on the selection from expression of interest pool, based on government priorities per occupations or occupation group, and based on relevant score and submission date. So it's a lot of assessment around that. And between the time you launch expression of interest application until the time you get invitation, nobody, no human will be involved, and nobody will be able to guarantee you specific time frame or when exactly your case may get an invitation. So that's an uncertainty of the process. In terms of invitation rounds, department promised to conduct those rounds every quarter. However, for 2024-2025 program year, we only seen 2 invitation rounds happen in 2024. And since then, nothing happened. So a lot of applicants who are relying purely on 189 visa are still sitting in the pool of candidates waiting for next invitation round and waiting in uncertainty of the time. For those of you who are planning to lodge 189 while you are in Australia, my immediate recommendations is not to rely purely on 189 invitation, because simply it may not happen at all within the duration of your visa. So be mindful and explore any other option. 189 visa, a skill independent visa, and once this visa is granted, applicant is not linked to their nominated profession anymore. So you can change the career or do whatever you like to do. You can work in Australia, you can work from Australia for overseas, does not matter. So there is no requirement to actually work in Australia. 189 visa is straight permanent residency visa, where all applicants will have access to Medicare. The next stage will be progress into citizenship, and the applicant will have access to subsidized childcare and access to free public schooling. So that's a good type of visa to have. However, because the visa is not linked to any employment, so it's going to be on the applicant to find themselves employment after the visa is granted and when they come to Australia. So it's a lot of services who may potentially assist applicants to get any sort of employment. But at the same time, my suggestion is to explore those options while you're in the process. So again, the process will consist of getting the occupation recognized through skill assessment, getting the English done, preferably for both primary and secondary applicant. And if the secondary applicant can get skill assessment as well, it's going to be a bonus to add the points if both occupations for primary and secondary applicant will be in the same occupation list. After that's all done, you can lodge your expression of interest, and your case will be in the pool of other candidates competing against each other based on occupation, based on points, based on time of submission. So it's a lot of criteria. And as I said, nobody will be able to guarantee when exactly and whether you will be actually able to secure this invitation. So apart from 189 visa, I strongly recommend candidates who are exploring skilled visas to consider state visa options as well. So the next type of visa, similar to 189 in terms of type of visa, so the same PR, will be 190 visa, nominated by state or territory. So this visa is still PR, but you will have a moral obligation where you're going to sign a declaration with the state that will nominate you to pretty much stay in this state and territory at least 2 years after the visa is granted, if you're in Australia at time of grant, or after you come to Australia if the visa was granted while you were offshore. Interestingly enough, a lot of people think that's no commitment at all. However, be mindful, in terms of visa conditions, there will be no visa condition that will prevent you from moving from one state to another. But don't forget that as a part of your nomination, when you're going through the state, you sign specific declaration where you're declaring your genuine intention to come to the state and settle in for the first 2 years. So the best advice here is to, of course, come to that state where you promised to come originally and do everything possible in your power to settle in that state. So if you receive any job offer from any other state, states no longer accept any applications to allow getting out of the state or relocating to the other state in the within the first 2 years. So it's on you as an applicant to either accept the risk and move, or just keep staying in the state where you promised to stay for the first 2 years. Also, bear in mind that depending on where you are at time of lodgement of your expression of interest, if you are overseas, you can access every single state available for your occupation and your skill set and your points. If you are applying from within Australia, usually you're locked to that particular state where you're staying, and only a few states may accept interstate candidates. So usually you're applying within the state where you're staying at the moment. For overseas applicant, as I said, you can apply for a variety of state. And my advice is to apply and create one expression of interest for one type of visa for one state. It will help you to diversify your applications, and it will allow state to select you. If you create one expression of interest indicating every single possible visa and every single possible state, unfortunately, the application will unlikely to produce any invite at all. So bear that in mind when you're going to be preparing for your stages. So 190 visa also allow all the visa holders to access Medicare, free public schooling, and subsidized childcare. Again, this visa will not link the applicant to the occupation which they nominate for the visa. So it does not matter whether you're nominating yourself as a software engineer, then you're coming to Australia and changing career path. It does not matter any longer once the visa is granted. So there is no problem with that. Then you are not linked to employment. You don't need to seek job offer for 190 visa in the majority of cases. So you can still apply for that visa without any employment from Australia. That's a bonus point. However, the competition is quite high, and state and territories will be selecting according to their needs and wants, according to their priorities. So again, nobody can influence when and whether your expression of interest will give you an opportunity to secure the invitation. So no migration agent, nobody can get involved in this process. Of course, migration agent can guide you through the process, create a strategy for you, and assist you with the documents, but they will not be able to influence consideration of your expression of interest and selection of your expression of interest. In terms of processes, be mindful that some states and territories may require additional applications, not only expression of interest, but also registration of interest. And majority of states will be more active at the beginning of the program year. So pretty much from July to December, it's going to be an active season of invitations and considerations. Then it's going to be new year, and after that we'll have, say, between February to May, the remainder of program year to get more invitations out, and then pretty much states will be processing the remainder of invitations and then closing the program year. So you need to be mindful that when you prepare your application, you still can lodge your application on the minimum required points, 65. But then again, the recommendation is to keep building the points up, keep working on the points, specifically highest possible English language for primary applicant, at least competent English for the secondary applicant, and potentially another skill assessment for the secondary applicant to have more points and to be more competitive within expression of interest. So a lot of people are looking at 189 and 190 visas only and not considering regional visas at all. Of course, there are some limitations for 491 regional visas, and we will discuss that. However, if you are aiming for skilled migration in the current climate, I would strongly recommend to explore regional migration and regional visas, simply because waiting for invitations for 189 and 190 may not be fruitful at all due to the high competition, and you simply may miss out your skill assessment, and English test may run out and you're going to be starting all over again. So in order not to miss the opportunities, my suggestion for the applicants is to explore 491 visa as an alternative option that brings additional points for the application, and then potentially can be picked up quicker due to, again, higher points and state and territory priorities. So when we're talking about 491 visa, again, the same process. The primary applicant needs to have the skill assessment, needs to have English done. Secondary applicant will have to consider English and skill assessment if possible, then the maximum possible points. And then you're going to be applying through expression of interest with your application to every single state where you can apply for 491 visa. I would not recommend submit one expression of interest for every single state, because it will not bring the results at all. So you need to create expression of interest per state, per visa where possible. And don't forget that, again, some states and territories may request you to create not only expression of interest, but also registration of interest within the state website, where, again, you have to declare everything that's needed, put your application in the queue, in the pool of the applicants, and then from that moment, it's going to be uncertainties when and whether this application will bring you results. So what we experienced from last year, 2024, 2025, it's a lot of candidates who've been waiting in the queue with no certainties on the future of the application due to changes in priority processing and priority occupation and preferences from the state and territories. So my advice is to lodge the application, make sure that every single claim you're making is backed up by the documents. Make sure that all the documents are valid and continue to be valid, because all your claims must be valid at time when you receive the invitation. The same is applicable to age requirement for primary applicants. So the primary applicant must be 44 inclusive at time of invitation, so not a time of lodgement of expression of interest, not a time of visa application lodgement. Every single point will be locked at time of invitation. So you need to make sure that your expression of interest is valid, every document is valid, every claim is valid, because you're going to be going through the states for 190 and 491 visas. Then the states will double check your claims and request documents. Once the state will approve you, you go and apply for visa application through Department of Home Affairs. And approval from the state will not, again, guarantee that you will get the visa, because the main application will not be a visa application. The main application will be expression of interest application, where you make your claims, and then pretty much every single claim must be valid at time of invitation, where the timing between the lodgement of expression of interest to actually getting the invitation is unknown. That's the problem. And sometimes it may take a year and more to get any sort of response from invitation process. So you need to be mindful when you're relying on these visas alone, because again, it's a very time consuming process. If we're talking about starting the process from the time when you have skill assessment and English in place, you may put your expression of interest in the queue, and since then you may wait a year plus to get the invitation. If that happened, then you will have 60 days to lodge your visa, and from there you also will have another year plus on waiting of the processing of your visa application. So we're talking about 2+ years in the process, and it's important for you to understand that yes, that visa brings you joy in terms of relying only for yourself on yourself without the need to secure any employment or job offer. At the same time, this visa is very stretched in time for the processing, and 2.5 years is fairly significant time for the families or the applicants to put the life on hold and wait for the visa. A lot of people made terrible mistake when they claim no partner in the visa application, and then they getting married throughout the process. That's a huge mistake. The reason for that is adding the partner will automatically adjust the points, and unless the partner had skill assessment and English test results at time of receiving the invitation, then your points will be changing and you unlikely get positive response from the visa section. So the idea of this processing is to unfortunately put your life on hold if you're applying as a single person to get your visa first, and then considering the pathways to bring your partner in Australia. I will have separate webinar in regards to partner visas, so you're welcome to attend. But do not make this mistake of getting the partner halfway through and then nobody will get the visa pretty much. So when you're going to be planning the move on those visas, for 189 and 190 visas, usually the department will give you at least a year to come to Australia and activate the visa. For a variety of cases, we've seen this stretch to up to the full 5 years for the applicants to relocate. And what we've seen that a lot of applicants will not be ready to relocate that fast once the visa is granted, and they're postponing their relocation for more than a year on 189 and 190 visas. So you can actually adjust and stretch the time even longer to allow you more time to settle and relocate to Australia if you're getting 189, 190 visas. If we're talking about 491 visa, in this case, it's a temporary visa, provisional visa that leads to permanent residency once the criteria is satisfied. And the criteria is to come and live and work from regional Australia for 3 years, where basically you will get 5-year visa and you will have to move fairly fast because it's going to be in your best interest to do so. So in this case, you actually going to be moving fairly fast once the visa is granted. And at this moment, I would strongly recommend, when you're in the process and at least once your visa is in the pipeline and you're waiting for the decision, start exploring where you're going to be relocating, what you're going to be doing there, how your family will be settling in that particular area to prepare for a move, because it's important to you're planning ahead. You're not simply waiting for the visa and then you're opening another can of worms and then unlocking a lot of questions: where to relocate, how to live in Australia, what to do. So do it all simultaneously. Another suggestion is to consider employer-sponsored visa while you put your expression of interest in the queue. The reason for that is, again, uncertainties over skilled visas at the moment and what we've seen throughout 2024, 2025. So not a lot of people are getting the invitations, and it's a high competition, and people may not get nothing at all for a year. So without waiting and relying only for one particular case, skilled visas, my suggestion would be to consider another options like employer-sponsored visa, because you already have skill assessment by then and you have English test done. So you're pretty much ready to go candidate. And of course, it's going to be a challenge to find employer, especially when applicant is overseas. However, starting the process is already a step forward. And without just sitting and waiting for the invitation, I would strongly recommend to explore any other visa options. So to wrap up, for skilled visas, again, it's a point-based process where the majority of work to be done by the applicants, and you investing your time, money, and effort into the process. However, once you're in the system and once you apply for expression of interest, there will be no guarantee. Nobody can guarantee you that your particular case will be getting the invitation within the duration of expression of interest. So you need to be mindful and cautious about the process and investment you're making in the process, in the vision to potentially get skilled visa. So once the visa is granted, 189 will not lock you for any location, no occupation. So you can even come to Australia and work for overseas company. That's not the problem. 190, permanent residency, you have a commitment with the state who nominate your case, where you're going to be coming and living for the first 2 years. after you come to Australia. So it's moral obligations, and you will sign the declaration as a part of the process. Again, there is no requirement to work in Australia specifically for Australian employer. So you can work for overseas company coming to Australia on 190 visa, or change the employer, change the career. For 491 visa, the requirement is to live and work and study from regional Australia. Again, there is a big discussion whether you can move from the region that originally nominates you. I would strongly recommend to explore the options, what's in that region, and prepare to stick to your obligations as part of your nomination process, because you're going to be signing the declaration stating that you're going to be committing to come and live in that regional area who will nominate you. So be mindful on that. Once you come to Australia, you will have to work from regional area. So basically, you cannot reside in regional area and travel to CBD in the city to work there. So you will have to work remotely or work locally. So that's maybe problematic for some of the occupations, because, for example, for IT occupations, a lot of offices now bringing people back to the office, and the blended mode where you work from home for 2 days and 3 days you have to be in Sydney CBD is not going to work in terms of 491 visa. So you need to be mindful on those limitations. For 491 visa, it's going to be also access to Medicare for all applicants. It's going to be free public schooling, but unfortunately, it's not going to be subsidized childcare. So I've heard the stories about limitations of getting the mortgage on 491 visa or any personal loan. So be mindful on those limitations. However, if we're going to be discussing on the options of 190 versus 491, it's actually better off to consider all the options, because if you get the invitation, get the visa, meaning you're going to be relocating in Australia. If you're going to be just simply waiting for 189 visa only in this current climate, you may not get nowhere at all, and you may end up with expiry on your skill assessment, English test, and pretty much the whole process will have to restart again. So it's planning mode for 189, 190, and 491. But for those who are watching, the best season to apply is the first part of program year between July and December, where the most of the states are active, and the most of the states may likely consider a lot of places and invitations. Then we'll break up for Christmas, and after Christmas we'll have between February and May for the second part of program year to get remaining places to be invited. So at the same time, if you're ready for application now, but your English is not perfect or your partner is still studying, you can still put your application in the queue with the vision that you're going to be actively working on improving your scores to make sure that you're going to be going to the top rank within your occupation in your process. Otherwise, the process will bring you no results. So as I said, to wrap up, skilled visa is not reliant on employer sponsorship or employer job offer, which is great. However, you invest in a lot of time and effort and money in the process without guarantee from the government that your application will be selected. So that's a harsh reality of 2024, 2025 visas, skilled visas. And if you still want to go through the process, my office assisting the applicants through 189, 190, 491 visas if you need any assistance. At the moment, I will be attending the questions from the chat, and we're going to be wrapping up this session. So let's have a question. Hello, you mentioned submitting separate EOIs for each state. Should I submit separate EOIs for 189, 190, 491 visas for one particular state? So yes, correction, 189 visa does not rely on any state. So it's one expression of interest for that if you have only one occupation assessed. Talking about 190 and 491 visa, only one state, Victoria, from previous program year, required applicant to choose which visa they want to apply for. Other states, you possibly can select 190 and then resubmit the application for 189 for 491, sorry. If the state and territory allows that, that gives you a separation of your expression of interest. And for example, if you get 491 visa from one state, you might get 190 from the other state later down the track. Should I submit an expression of interest in one system for each region, or does each region have its own platform for applications? So expression of interest application will actually request you to choose the visa and choose the region. So again, you cannot tick every single state in one application. It will not bring you no results. Some states and territories will require you to submit registration of interest on the top of expression of interest, and then you have to go state by state to see what are requirements for each state and how to manage the applications there. Then you will have a variety of expression of interest, and you may have some registration of interest linked to certain state and territories. So it's not one application only. So you need to think strategically. If you, for example, would like to consider 491 visa in the future, you can prep and submit those expression of interest, but put them on hold and then see how your 189, 190 performing throughout first half of the year. If there is no results, you can switch to 491 as an example of a planning. So thank you very much for your participation, and sorry for my technical issues for this live. I'm hoping that this session was helpful, and I'm hoping for each of you who are choosing skilled migration to get your precious invitation, get your skilled visa, and come to Australia for your new life. Thank you.